Bill Cosby, you know, was convicted of that sexual assault from back in 2004. Well, he's been appealing, and he's been trying to get his case heard by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania has said, yes, we will hear your appeal. This is big because they didn't have to. And he's got a couple of issues that I'm sure he believes are very significant. I think most people looking at his case and other cases like his involving the MeToo movement believe that these issues are very, very significant. And now the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania is going to hear all this. Let's bring in Court TV anchor Julie Grant, who you may or may not know was a prosecutor in the state of Pennsylvania and covered Bill Cosby's trials in much detail. So, Julie, let's start here. Am I right that this is big, that the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania is going to actually hear arguments on his appeal?
You are absolutely right, Vinny. This is huge because remember, we reported this on Court TV back in December when the Superior Court in Pennsylvania, you know, the middle level court, said, no, we're not going to hear this appeal. No, they denied it. So now this was an appeal taken to the Supreme Court, and they announced today, yes, they were going to allow these arguments to be heard. So it's not a final win for Bill Cosby. It's far, far from that. But it is a win in the sense that they're going to raise these arguments that they've really raised all along, Vinny. The two issues that the Supreme Court has agreed to hear are issues that go way, way back when. So even before, really before the result of the first trial even. I mean, these are issues that were raised prior to the first trial and carried on through the first trial, the second trial, and afterward. So this will be really interesting to see once this day comes and those arguments are made.
All right, so one of the issues involves who's allowed to testify at the trial, right? Because you had the first trial and the second trial. The second trial, they brought in more witnesses, these other women, other accusers. And this really is the foundation of many of these Me Too cases that are being brought now, like we saw with Harvey Weinstein. So what exactly is the issue here for Cosby?
Exactly, Vinny. So what you're mentioning is issue number one that they're going to look into, the prior bad act witnesses. In the Weinstein case, that was in New York. They were referred to as Molyneux witnesses. In Pennsylvania, that's not a case in Pennsylvania. They're just called prior bad act witnesses. And during the first trial, Judge Stephen O'Neill limited the state to calling one other prior bad act witness. In the second trial, he allowed the state to call five. And the defense objected to the number of witnesses, to the reliability of the testimony, saying that it didn't fit the pattern that the state was trying to establish. So there were quite a few issues that were raised. Nonetheless, the judge allowed that testimony to come in. So that is going to be examined. The second issue the court is going to address is an agreement that was supposedly made between former district attorney in Montgomery County, Bruce Castor, and Bill Cosby way back when these allegations were made back in the year 2004. Now, it's important to understand this agreement was, as we understand it, kind of like a wink and a nod kind of agreement. There was nothing like a formal immunity agreement ever put into place. But apparently there was an agreement from the DA then who said, we're not going to prosecute you now or ever. And Bill Cosby's team has said that he relied on that promise by the former DA to his detriment and went ahead, gave a deposition in a civil suit filed by the victim who testified in the criminal case as well, Ms. Andrea Constant. And during that deposition that was taken, Bill Cosby talked about getting quaaludes, giving quaaludes to women. And in the criminal case, prosecutors took that deposition testimony and they entered into evidence, those statements, as admissions. So that's something the court is going to consider as well. That civil case, that resulted in a settlement in 2006. He paid her $3.4 million to settle that. So they're objecting to his admissions being used, and then the fact that he testified in the civil case thinking criminal charges would never come and those statements could never come back to haunt him, and they did. So the state's going to look at prior bad act witnesses and the agreement not to prosecute as the two big issues they're going to be considering.
Yeah, and if the Supreme Court says those prior bad witnesses are more prejudicial than probative and should not be allowed, it becomes a new trial and a very different trial, much like the first trial, and could also impact the way these cases are tried around the country, because sometimes when one court says something, other courts start looking at that issue, and maybe someone like Harvey Weinstein or someone else who's being charged, the prosecution won't have the ability to bring in those prior bad witnesses. So that's a big decision that has to be made. What's the timing of all this? When can we expect arguments and a decision? And is there any chance that Cosby gets out in the interim?
Such great questions. So today, the court just said that they're granting this allowance of appeal. They didn't schedule it for a hearing date yet. So we don't know when he's going to appear in court next, when these arguments are going to happen. Certainly, there's going to be a lot of preparation that's going to go into this. He's currently serving a 3 to 10-year prison sentence, Vinny. He went off to prison in September of 2018 in Pennsylvania, of course, been there since then. His team is saying they're going to make an argument for bail. My legal opinion is that is likely to fail, as this was a conviction and a sentence, convicted of 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault and sentenced accordingly. I think bail is very unlikely pending appeal, but they're going to try to make the argument. So we shall see what happens, Vinny.
All right, we'll continue to cover this one. Huge developments tonight. Julie Grant, thank you so much.